Tiberius, you are doing excellently well.
Thank you, Cassia, for saving my life 5 years ago.
Portia, you are doing a great job on him.
3 days felt like 3 heartbeats when war was coming. Cassia stood in the training yard watching Tiberius practice with wooden swords, his 8-year-old body moving with the natural grace of royal blood. 5 years had transformed the frightened 3-year-old she'd caught mid-air into a confident young prince, but sometimes, when the light hit his golden eyes just right, she still saw that terrified child falling through the mist. Commander Portia corrected his stance, praising his improvement, and the boy beamed with pride that made Cassia's heart ache. He'd grown so much, learned so much. Every day he became more like the alpha he was destined to be, and every day Cassia felt the weight of her responsibility settling deeper into her bones. The pendant against her chest pulsed warmly, as it had done increasingly over the past day. She'd learned to trust these pulses. They'd warned her of 3 assassination attempts over the years, guided her through 2 political coups that tried to destabilize Marcus's rule, helped her sense danger before it struck. The pendant had become like a second heartbeat, a constant companion in her role as Tiberius's guardian. But this pulse felt different, urgent, insistent, almost hungry. She pressed her hand against it, feeling heat radiating through the fabric of her robes. The silver setting had always been cool to the touch before, a gentle presence. Now it felt feverish, as if something inside it was waking up after a long sleep. "You should rest," Marcus said, appearing at her side with the silent grace of an alpha. 5 years had deepened the lines around his eyes, etched by the weight of ruling a kingdom that had nearly torn itself apart. But they'd also softened something in him. The grief-mad warrior who'd returned from the Northern War had gradually transformed into a ruler who smiled, who listened, who sometimes sat with his son and his guardian by the fire and looked almost peaceful. More than that, though neither of them had spoken of it directly, there was something else in his eyes when he looked at her now. Something that made her heart skip and her breath catch. Something that felt dangerous and wonderful in equal measure. "I can't rest when Lord Cornelius is 12 hours away with 500 wolves," Cassia replied, though exhaustion pulled at her bones like iron weights. She'd been using the pendant's power constantly for the past 2 days, enhancing the fortress defenses with ancient magic, checking on Tiberius every hour, sensing for threats in every shadow, coordinating with the mages to strengthen the walls. Each use of the pendant left her more drained than the last. She dismissed it as stress, as the natural fatigue of preparing for war. But now, watching Tiberius laugh as he finally managed to disarm Portia, she felt a tremor of unease. Marcus studied her face with the intensity he usually reserved for battle strategy, concern darkening his golden eyes. "The pendant is glowing brighter than usual. Is it draining you?" "It's protecting us," Cassia said firmly, pushing away the flicker of doubt. "That's what Luna Octavia intended. When danger comes, the Guardian uses the blessing to defend the bloodline. It's worked perfectly for 5 years." "At what cost to the Guardian?" Marcus asked quietly, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him sharply. Fear. Actual fear. She'd seen Marcus face down armies without flinching, but the thought of her being harmed put that expression in his eyes. Before Cassia could answer, Tiberius ran over, his wooden sword clutched triumphantly. "Cassia, did you see? Commander Portia says I almost disarmed her." "Almost doesn't count in battle, little prince," Cassia teased, ruffling his dark hair, so like his father's. But her hand trembled slightly, weakness seeping through her muscles, and she pulled it back before he noticed. The pendant pulsed again, and this time pain lanced through her chest, sharp, brief, gone before she could react. Like a needle of ice piercing her heart. She forced a smile. "You're getting strong. Your mother would be proud." Tiberius hugged her waist, his face pressed against the pendant. For just an instant, his expression flickered, confusion then discomfort. He pulled back slightly, his brow furrowing. "Cassia, the moonstone feels strange, like it's too warm, and it's humming. Do you hear it humming?" Cold dread crept up Cassia's spine. Children with royal blood could sometimes sense magic that adults missed, their connection to the first wolves giving them perception beyond normal senses. "It's just working hard to keep you safe," she assured him, though her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Go finish your training. We'll read your favorite story tonight before bed." "The one about the first wolves making the blood oath?" Tiberius asked hopefully. "Whichever one you want," Cassia promised. As Tiberius ran back to Portia, Marcus caught Cassia's arm, his grip gentle but insistent. He felt something wrong with the pendant. "And so do I. The magic radiating from it has changed. Darker, more aggressive. Let me call the royal mages to examine it." Mage Sylvanus studied under the first wolves' priestesses. "If anyone can verify the pendant's authenticity." "There's no time," Cassia interrupted, pulling away. "Cornelius arrives at dawn. The pendant is our best defense. Octavia's blessing has saved Tiberius more times than I can count. I trust it with my life." "That's what worries me," Marcus murmured, but horns sounded from the watchtowers, cutting off further conversation. The scouts had returned. The enemy was closer than expected. The war council met in the Hall of Howling as sunset painted the sky blood-red, an omen that made the older wolves mutter nervously. Magistrate Felix unrolled maps showing Lord Cornelius's approach from 3 directions, a coordinated attack meant to overwhelm their defenses. 500 warriors, Commander Portia reported grimly, her scarred fingers tracing routes on the map. Well-trained, well-armed, and fanatically loyal to Valentina's memory. They believe Tiberius is cursed, that his bloodline corrupted Valentina and caused her death. Some of them are former fortress guards who served under her, warriors who fled after her execution. They're not here to conquer, they're here to erase the forbidden bloodline entirely. "Religious zealots make the most dangerous enemies," Elder Silas added, his voice heavy. "They fight not for gold or glory, but for belief. They think they're serving the moon goddess by destroying what they see as corruption." "Can we hold them?" Aurelia asked, her hand resting on her sword. She'd fully recovered from the silver poisoning that had nearly killed her 5 years ago, and now she served as Marcus's war advisor and captain of the Royal Guard. "With our current forces, maybe. But casualties will be devastating." Portia's scarred face was hard with calculation. "They have siege equipment, dark mages, and worst of all, they have conviction. They believe they're purifying the kingdom. Soldiers fighting for faith don't break easily." "We have 300 warriors," another council member said nervously. 300 against 500, with them holding the siege advantage. "Even with our superior position, the odds are against us." "Then we convince them otherwise," Marcus said firmly. "We show them that Tiberius is blessed, not cursed. We show them." The pendant around Cassia's neck suddenly blazed with light so bright everyone in the room flinched, shielding their eyes. Pain exploded through her body like lightning through her veins, driving her to her knees. The stone floor rushed up to meet her, and she barely caught herself on her hands. Images flooded her mind, visions that burned behind her eyes with searing clarity. She saw the fortress burning, towers collapsing, Tiberius screaming as dark magic consumed him. She saw Marcus falling in battle, Aurelia's body broken on the courtyard stones, darkness swallowing the forbidden bloodline like a hungry beast. And underneath it all, she heard a voice whispering instructions. The pendant was showing her how to prevent this future, showing her exactly what needed to be done. "Cassia!" Marcus was beside her instantly, his strong hands supporting her weight. "What's happening?" "The pendant is showing me," Cassia gasped, her voice strained and distant. "It's showing me how to defend the fortress. There's ancient magic in the foundation, wards placed by the first wolves when they built this place. If I channel the pendant's power through them, I can create a barrier that will hold Cornelius's army back long enough for reinforcements to arrive." She looked up at Marcus, and something in her silver eyes made him go cold. "We have allies 3 days north. If we can hold for 72 hours, They'll arrive and trap Cornelius between our forces. But the barrier requires tremendous power. The pendant can provide it, but I'll need to stay connected to the wards, channeling constantly, keeping the magic stable. At what cost? Aurelia demanded, echoing her brother's earlier question. She knelt beside Cassia, studying her face with growing alarm. Cassia, you look half dead already. Your lips are blue. You're trembling. If you channel more power, then I'll be fully dead, Cassia finished bluntly, though saying it aloud made her stomach turn. But Tiberius will live. The kingdom will survive. Isn't that what guardians do? Trade their lives for the ones they protect. No. The roar came from the doorway. Tiberius stood there, having slipped past his guards again, something he did with increasing frequency as he grew more confident in his abilities. His golden eyes blazed with tears and fury, making him look heartbreakingly young and impossibly ancient all at once. The weight of royal blood showed in moments like these, when emotion and power collided. You can't die, Cassia. You promised. You promised to teach me to be Alpha. You promised to stay. He ran forward, dropping to his knees beside her, his small hands gripping her robes. I don't want a barrier. I don't want to be safe if you're dead. Please don't leave me like Mama did. Cassia's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She'd been so focused on protecting him from external threats, she hadn't considered how her death would wound him from within. He'd already lost his birth mother. The thought of losing another mother figure would devastate him in ways no enemy army could match. Tiberius, sweetheart, she began, but he cut her off. The pendant is lying, Tiberius said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. His royal blood gave him presence beyond his years. It feels wrong, feels hungry, like it wants to eat you. It doesn't feel like Mama Octavia at all. She loved me. She wouldn't ask you to die for me. Silence fell like a physical weight. Marcus's expression changed, hardening into something dangerous. Mage Sylvanus, examine the pendant. Now. An elderly wolf stepped forward, one of the few royal mages who'd survived Valentina's purge 5 years ago. Sylvanus was ancient, his gray beard reaching his waist. His eyes clouded with cataracts but sharp with magical perception. His hands glowed with diagnostic magic as he approached Cassia, weaving complex patterns in the air. His expression grew increasingly horrified with each passing second. The glow intensified as he probed deeper, and suddenly he jerked back as if burned. Alpha Marcus, he said slowly, his voice shaking, this pendant is not the original blessing of Luna Octavia. The world tilted sideways. What? Cassia breathed, her hand flying to the pendant that had guided her for 5 years. 5 years of trusting it. 5 years of using it to protect Tiberius. 5 years of believing it was Luna Octavia's gift. It's a replica, Sylvanus continued, his voice growing stronger with certainty. A sophisticated one, embedded with compulsion magic and life-draining curses. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Whoever made this studied the original extensively. But it's fundamentally different in nature. The real pendant. His voice shook with anger now. The real pendant was probably swapped years ago. Whoever wears this believes they're being protected, believes they're using blessed power, but in truth they're slowly being consumed. He turned to face Cassia fully, and there was profound sadness in his clouded eyes. Every time you've used it to defend Prince Tiberius, every time you've trusted its guidance, you've been feeding your life force into a trap. The visions it shows you. Compulsion magic designed to make you willing to sacrifice yourself. The warnings it gives. Just enough truth to keep you dependent. The warmth you feel. Your own life essence being slowly drained away and stored for someone else to claim. Horror crashed over Cassia like a frozen wave. 5 years. 5 years of trusting, using, relying on what she thought was divine blessing, but was actually poison disguised as protection. Every act of courage, every moment of using the pendant's power to save Tiberius from danger, had been feeding into a trap she never saw coming. But it saved us, Cassia whispered, her mind reeling. The assassination attempts, the political coups, the poisoned food I detected, traps I sensed. It warned me. It helped me protect. It gave you just enough truth to keep you dependent, Sylvanus said sadly, his voice heavy with sympathy. Real information mixed with manipulation. That's how the best traps work. They give you reasons to trust them. The pendant probably enhanced your natural abilities, the diluted first wolf blood you carry, the guardian instincts you've developed, while slowly draining your life essence. A perfect trap for a guardian too devoted to question divine gifts. Cassia felt sick. All those times she'd clutched the pendant for guidance, all those moments she'd thanked Luna Octavia for the blessing, all those nights she'd pressed it to her heart and felt comforted by its warmth, she'd been embracing her own slow death. Marcus's face had gone white with rage, his alpha power filling the room with oppressive weight. Warriors around the hall dropped to their knees instinctively, overwhelmed by the force of his fury. Who did this? As if summoned by the question, the fortress bells began tolling in alarm. Not the pattern for approaching armies. 3 bells, pause, 3 bells. This was different. Sharp, rapid, discordant. The pattern for infiltration. For enemies already inside the walls. For betrayal. Commander Portia sprinted to the window, then spun back with her blade drawn, her scarred face pale. The western gate is opening. Someone's letting Cornelius's forces in early. We're being betrayed from within. Seal the hall, Marcus commanded, his voice cutting through rising panic. Get Tiberius to the safe room. Portia, rally the inner guard. Silas, activate the emergency wards. Everyone else. The massive doors to the Hall of Howling exploded inward. Ancient oak 3 feet thick, reinforced with iron and blessed by the first wolves themselves, shattered like glass. Splinters flew inward like arrows, forcing everyone to duck. Smoke billowed through the opening, and through it strode an army. Lord Cornelius led the charge, flanked by 50 warriors in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. His face was twisted with righteous fury, his sword already drawn and dripping with blood, probably from the guards who'd been defending the western gate. But it wasn't Cornelius who made Cassia's blood freeze in her veins. It was the woman beside him. Identical to Valentina in every way. Same angular face, same cruel smile, same predatory grace in every movement. But where Valentina's eyes had been amber, striking but natural, this woman's eyes were black as midnight, swimming with forbidden magic that made Cassia's skin crawl. Power radiated from her like heat from a forge, dark and hungry and wrong. "Hello, brother-in-law," she purred, her voice a twisted echo of the dead Luna. "Did you miss me? Or should I say, did you miss my sister?" Marcus's sword was in his hand instantly, positioning himself between the intruders and Tiberius. His eyes widened with recognition, then narrowed with disbelief. "You're dead. Valentina's twin sister Marcella died 20 years ago in a dark magic accident. The records lie," Marcella interrupted, stepping fully into the hall with confidence that spoke of absolute power. Behind her, Cornelius's warriors fanned out, surrounding the council members. More warriors poured through the shattered doors, cutting off escape routes. "I didn't die. I was exiled for practicing dark magic, for refusing to accept my place as the weaker twin, for demanding power that wasn't mine to claim. My dear sister got everything, beauty, status, the chance to marry an alpha, while I was cast out for daring to reach beyond my station." She walked forward slowly, each step deliberate, her black eyes scanning the room before settling on Cassia with disturbing intensity. "So I waited, learned, grew strong in arts that would make the moon goddess weep. Blood magic, soul binding, curse crafting. I became everything our family feared and more. And when my dear sister wrote to me 5 years ago, begging for help with her treasonous little plot to put her bastard son on the throne, she smiled, showing teeth. I saw an opportunity. Cassia felt pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity, like a puzzle she'd been staring at for years finally revealing its terrible picture. You gave Valentina the plan. You told her how to kill Tiberius. I told her how to make it look like an accident, Marcella corrected, circling closer like a predator studying prey. Pushed from a tower, body carried away by wind. Tragic but believable. What I didn't account for was a desperate Omega with hidden bloodline catching him mid-air. Her black eyes fixed on Cassia with something like fascination. You ruined the first plan. So I had to create a second one. The pendant, Aurelia said, horror dawning on her face. You swapped it after Valentina's execution. You've been poisoning Cassia for 5 years. Not poisoning, Marcella said pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. Harvesting. There's a difference. Poison kills quickly, messily, obviously. What I did was elegant. Every time she used the fake pendant's power, every act of courage and protection, fed life essence into a vessel I could claim later. The curse was designed to accumulate power slowly, storing it like honey in a jar. And once she'd fed enough, once the pendant had drained her nearly dry. She gestured, and the pendant around Cassia's neck began to glow with sickly green light that made everyone in the hall step back instinctively. I could activate the transfer curse. Her guardian bond with Tiberius would snap to me. I'd become his protector, his trusted mentor. The one person who could get close enough to finish the job without anyone suspecting. After all, who questions a guardian? The implications crashed over Cassia like an avalanche. Marcella had spent 5 years positioning this trap. 5 years of patience, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And Cassia had walked right into it, so focused on protecting Tiberius that she'd never thought to question the pendant's authenticity. Cassia clawed at the pendant with desperate fingers, trying to tear it off, but it had fused to her skin, the chain melding with her flesh in a way that made her stomach turn. It burned like acid where it touched. Green light pulsing in rhythm with her failing heartbeat. Pain consumed her, radiating outward from her chest, and through it she felt something fundamental tearing. The vow she'd made 8 years ago, the bond she'd forged with Tiberius, the connection that had defined her entire life, being ripped away strand by strand. It felt like someone was pulling out her soul with fishhooks. No! Tiberius's scream echoed through the hall with power that shook the walls. The 8-year-old prince moved with speed that shocked everyone, racing toward Cassia with his small hands outstretched. His golden eyes blazed with light, pure, divine, the sacred blessing of the first wolves manifesting in his rage and fear. Let her go. She's mine. My guardian. You can't have her. Tiberius, stay back. Marcus lunged for his son, but Cornelius's warriors blocked his path, forcing the Alpha into combat even as his child ran toward danger. Blades clashed, and suddenly the hall erupted into violence. Tiberius reached Cassia and grabbed the pendant with both hands, his royal blood flaring golden bright. The moment his skin touched the cursed artifact, something remarkable happened. The pendant shattered. Not slowly, not gradually, but in one explosive burst of light that threw everyone nearest to the ground. Golden divine power versus dark corrupted magic, and the child's pure connection to the first wolf's blessing tore through Marcella's curse like sunlight through shadow. The pendant's chain snapped, fragments of cursed metal and stone scattering across the floor, hissing and smoking as the conflicting magics consumed each other. The backlash was devastating. Energy exploded outward in a shockwave that cracked the stone floor, extinguished torches, and sent warriors stumbling. Cassia and Tiberius were thrown backward by the force, but Cassia twisted mid-air with that same impossible speed from 8 years ago, the speed that had caught a falling prince and changed everything. She caught Tiberius mid-flight, turned her body to absorb the impact, and crashed into the stone wall with bone-cracking force. Pain exploded through her left side, ribs cracking, shoulder dislocating, head bouncing off stone. But Tiberius was unharmed in her arms, cushioned by her body, protected even as the world spun and darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Still catching him, she coughed, blood on her lips, her vision blurring. Still keeping my promise. You've ruined everything. Marcella shrieked, her composure finally breaking, revealing the madness underneath. Her face contorted with rage, black magic crackling around her hands like lightning, building toward something catastrophic. The temperature in the hall dropped 10 degrees, frost forming on stone. 5 years. 5 years of planning, of patience, of careful manipulation. If I can't claim the guardian bond, if I can't kill the heir through subtlety, then I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Dark fire began to coalesce between her palms, flames that burned black and purple, that made the air itself scream. I'll burn this entire fortress to the ground and pick through the ashes for his bones. She raised her hands, dark fire gathering into a massive sphere of destruction, and Cornelius's warriors charged forward in a coordinated assault. The Hall of Howling erupted into complete chaos, Marcus's guards clashing with invaders, steel ringing against steel, blood splashing on ancient stone. Portia shouting commands, trying to organize a defense against overwhelming odds. Aurelia's blade singing through the air as she protected Elder Silas. Council members fighting desperately with whatever weapons they could grab. But Cassia, broken and bleeding on the floor with Tiberius clutched to her chest, felt something else awakening. The pendant had shattered. The curse had broken. And in breaking, it had released 5 years' worth of stolen life essence back into her body in one overwhelming flood. Not the slow poison she'd been fed, not the corrupted magic that had been draining her, but pure power. Raw, unfiltered, blazing with the rage of a guardian who'd been used, manipulated, betrayed, nearly destroyed. Her silver hair began to glow like moonlight made solid. Her weak Omega wolf, enhanced by diluted first wolf blood and years of unwitting sacrifice, suddenly wasn't weak anymore. The life essence that Marcella had stolen and stored, intending to claim for herself, had nowhere else to go when the curse broke. It flooded back into Cassia's body, into her wolf, transforming everything it touched. It surged, evolved, became something the kingdom had never seen. A guardian wolf, blessed directly by the moon goddess herself as reward for 8 years of unwavering devotion and sacrifice. The transformation burned through her like silver fire, rewriting her very nature, elevating her from Omega to something entirely new. Pain turned to power. Weakness became strength. And Cassia understood, in that moment of transformation, what she'd truly become. Not just a protector, not just a guardian, but a living embodiment of the oath she'd sworn 8 years ago. Cassia stood slowly, setting Tiberius behind a pillar with gentle hands. "Stay there, little prince. Let me show you what real guardians do when someone threatens their charges." She moved. Not with the enhanced speed the fake pendant had given her. Not with borrowed power or stolen blessings. But with her own strength, earned through years of protection, crystallized into something pure and unstoppable. She became a silver blur, crossing the hall faster than thought, intercepting Marcella's dark fire with her bare hands. The magic screamed as it met something it couldn't corrupt. Faith made manifest, love transformed into armor, a guardian's vow given physical form. The dark fire struck Cassia's palms and simply stopped, frozen in mid-air, crackling and hissing against a barrier that shouldn't exist. "You made one mistake," Cassia said, her voice resonating with power that made the stone walls tremble and dust fall from the ceiling. "You thought guardians were weak because we serve. You thought devotion was the same as submission. You thought loving someone enough to die for them made us vulnerable." She pushed forward, and the impossible happened. The dark fire began to retreat. Step by step, inch by inch, Cassia drove Marcella's magic back through sheer force of will. Silver light emanated from her body, growing brighter with each step, washing over the hall like a cleansing tide. "But guardians aren't weak," Cassia continued, her silver eyes blazing with divine fury. "We're the strongest wolves in any pack. Because we fight not for ourselves, but for those who cannot fight alone. We endure not because we're forced to, but because we choose to. We sacrifice not from weakness, but from strength. And we never, ever break our promises." Silver light exploded from Cassia's body like a supernova, washing over the entire hall in a wave of purifying energy. Dark magic burned away like mist before the sun. Cornelius's warriors stumbled back, their corrupted weapons crumbling to rust, their dark armor cracking and falling away. The very walls seemed to sing with the return of ancient blessings that Marcella's presence had suppressed. The false Luna's black eyes went wide with terror as she finally understood what she was facing. Not an Omega, not a servant, but something that the moon goddess herself had forged from devotion and sacrifice. A true guardian, elevated to divine status, unstoppable in defense of her charge. "You can't do this," Marcella gasped, stumbling backward as her magic failed for the first time in 20 years. "You're just an Omega, just a servant, just—" "I'm the guardian of the forbidden bloodline," Cassia interrupted, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. "I'm the Omega who caught a falling prince midair 8 years ago and vowed to keep him safe. I'm the one who endured your curse for 5 years and survived. I'm the one who still stands between your darkness and my prince." She smiled, fierce and beautiful and utterly terrifying. "And I'm the last thing you'll ever see." The battle that followed would be sung about for generations. Cassia fought like a force of nature, protecting Tiberius with one hand while coordinating the defense with the other. Her newly awakened guardian power let her move with impossible speed, be in 3 places at once, turn aside attacks before they landed. She didn't kill unless absolutely necessary, but she was merciless in defense, blocking every attack aimed at the prince, countering every spell Marcella desperately cast. Marcus fought beside her, and somewhere in the chaos of battle, they moved as one, Alpha and Guardian, King and Protector, 2 souls defending the same precious life. He covered her left side when her injuries made her stumble. She protected his back when warriors tried to flank him. They fought like they'd been training together for years, like their souls knew each other's movements. Aurelia was magnificent, her blade dancing through enemies with lethal grace. Elder Silas wielded magic that surprised everyone, revealing powers he'd kept hidden for decades. Commander Portia rallied the fortress guards, turning defensive positions into aggressive counterattacks. But the tide truly turned when the servants joined the fight. All across the fortress, Omegas who'd been invisible for their entire lives saw Cassia glowing with divine power and understood. Strength came in forms they'd never been taught to recognize. They poured into the hall with kitchen knives, with brooms, with whatever they could grab, and their sheer numbers overwhelmed Cornelius's elite warriors. An Omega warrior was a contradiction that the invaders had never prepared for. They fell to unexpected attacks, to servants who fought with the fury of the long oppressed, finally given permission to be strong. Marcella fought desperately, her dark magic growing more chaotic as her carefully laid plans crumbled. She tried curse after curse, each one deflecting harmlessly off Cassia's silver aura. She summoned demons from the void, and Cassia banished them with a word. She attempted to possess Tiberius directly, and Cassia simply stepped between them, her guardian bond forming an impenetrable wall. "Why won't you die?" Marcella screamed, her beautiful face twisted with fury and disbelief. "I planned this perfectly. I studied for 20 years. I waited, I schemed, I sacrificed everything." "That's your mistake," Cassia said quietly, advancing steadily. "You sacrificed for power. I sacrificed for love. And love is always stronger." She struck, not with magic or blade, but with pure guardian power channeled into a single touch. Her palm pressed against Marcella's chest, right over her heart, and silver light poured forth like water from a broken dam. Marcella's dark magic imploded, turning inward, consuming itself. She'd built her power on stolen life force, on corrupted blessings, on violations of sacred law. And when confronted with something genuinely pure, something that had been freely given and divinely blessed, her magic had no defense. The dark mage collapsed, her black eyes fading to gray, her body aging rapidly as years of forbidden magic extracted their price all at once. In seconds, she went from beautiful and terrifying to ancient and withered, her body crumbling to ash before she even hit the ground. When Marcella finally fell completely, consumed by her own dark magic as it rebounded from Cassia's silver shield. Lord Cornelius dropped his sword with a clatter that echoed through the suddenly silent hall. The remaining warriors, seeing their dark mage defeated and their cause lost, surrendered one by one. It was over. As the sun rose over Sanguis Noctis, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Marcus stood in the blood-stained hall of Howling with his son safe in his arms and Cassia swaying with exhaustion beside him. Her silver hair had stopped glowing, but there was still something otherworldly about her now, something that made everyone who looked at her instinctively lower their eyes in respect. Commander Portia was binding prisoners with efficient brutality. Aurelia was coordinating healers, her armor dented but her spirit unbroken. Elder Silas was already calling for scribes to record this night for the kingdom's history. The night an Omega became a guardian and saved them all. "Is it over?" Tiberius asked, his voice small and scared despite everything. "Is Cassia going to be okay?" "I'm okay," Cassia promised, though she could barely stand. The transformation had burned through her, left her hollow and aching in ways that would take weeks to fully heal. But she was alive. Tiberius was safe. That was all that mattered. "I'm always okay as long as you're safe." "That's not good enough," Marcus said firmly. He set Tiberius down gently and turned to face Cassia fully, his golden eyes intense with emotion he'd been holding back for years. "You nearly died. Again. You've been dying slowly for 5 years, and none of us saw it. You've sacrificed everything over and over, asking nothing in return. And his voice broke. "I can't lose you, Cassia. Tiberius can't lose you. The kingdom can't lose you." "I'm a guardian," Cassia said simply, though tears were forming in her eyes. "This is what we do. We protect. We sacrifice. We—" "Then be my guardian," Marcus interrupted, and suddenly he was kneeling before her. This powerful Alpha King, victor of 100 battles, ruler of Sanguis Noctis, dropping to his knees in front of an Omega in front of his entire court. Not just Tiberius's. "Be my partner, my mate, my equal. Help me rule this kingdom. Help me raise our son. Yes, our son, because you've been his mother in every way that matters since the night you caught him falling." Gasps rippled through the assembled wolves. Some shocked, some delighted, some scandalized. But no one spoke because this was clearly a moment that would shape history. Tears spilled down Cassia's cheeks. "Marcus, I'm not. I'm just—" "You're extraordinary," Marcus interrupted passionately. "You're brave and brilliant and stronger than any wolf I've ever known. You transformed from Omega to Guardian through sheer devotion. You survived a 5-year curse that should have killed you in months. You've raised my son, defended my kingdom, and I've loved you for years now, watching you with Tiberius, seeing how you transform every life you touch, witnessing your courage and compassion and unwavering strength." He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple silver embedded with moonstones that glowed softly in the dawn light. "I should have said something sooner. Should have courted you properly. But I'm saying it now, in front of everyone, so there can be no doubt." His voice strengthened, carrying through the hall. "Cassia of the silver hair, guardian of the forbidden bloodline, savior of my son and my kingdom, will you be my Luna? Will you let me spend the rest of my life ensuring you never have to sacrifice alone again?" The hall had gone absolutely silent. Every wolf, noble and common, warrior and servant, Alpha and Omega, stood frozen, witnessing something unprecedented. An Alpha King proposing to an Omega. A ruler kneeling before a guardian. Tradition and hierarchy crumbling in the face of genuine love and respect. Cassia looked down at this Alpha King kneeling before her, offering her everything. Then she looked at Tiberius, who was bouncing excitedly, his golden eyes shining with hope and joy. Then at Aurelia, who was openly crying with happiness. Then at all the wolves, noble and common, warrior and servant, who were watching with expressions ranging from shock to joy to something like hope. She thought about the invisible Omega she'd been 8 years ago. The servant who scrubbed floors and picked moonflowers and was expected to bow her head and accept whatever life gave her. She thought about catching a falling prince and making a vow that changed everything. She thought about 5 years of being slowly poisoned while believing she was blessed. She thought about transformation and sacrifice and the strange, winding path that had led her to this moment. "I caught a falling prince 8 years ago," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "And I've been falling ever since, falling in love with him, with this kingdom, with you. I never thought I deserved any of this. Never thought an Omega could stand beside an Alpha as an equal. But maybe." She smiled through her tears. "Maybe that's exactly what this kingdom needs. A Luna who remembers what it's like to be powerless, so she never forgets to protect those who are." She took the ring from his hand, sliding it onto her finger. "Yes, Marcus Aurelius. I'll be your Luna, your guardian, mate, your equal. And together," her smile widened, "together we'll make sure no one ever falls alone again." The hall erupted in howls of celebration, a sound so loud and joyous it could be heard for miles. Warriors howled. Servants howled. Even the prisoners being held for judgment found themselves joining the ancient song of pack unity and celebration. Marcus stood, pulling Cassia into his arms despite her injuries, kissing her with a passion that had been building for years. Tiberius threw himself at both of them, wrapping his small arms around their legs, laughing and crying at the same time. Aurelia joined the embrace, then Elder Silas, then Commander Portia, until half the hall was in one massive, joyful group hug. "Does this mean Cassia is my real mother now?" Tiberius asked hopefully, looking up at them with those sacred golden eyes. "If she'll have you," Marcus said, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. Cassia knelt despite her broken ribs, cupping Tiberius's face in her hands. "I've been your mother since the day I caught you, little prince. I just didn't have the title to match. But now," she smiled, "now it's official. You're stuck with me forever." "Good," Tiberius said firmly. "Because I'm never letting you go." The coronation happened 3 weeks later, after the wounded had been healed and the fortress had been repaired. The entire kingdom gathered in the Hall of Howling, nobles and servants, warriors and healers, wolves from every pack and every rank. Cassia stood on the dais in robes of silver and white that seemed to glow with their own light. She'd fully recovered from her injuries, and the transformation into a guardian wolf had left permanent changes. Her silver hair was longer, shinier, almost luminescent. Her eyes, once plain gray, now held flecks of gold. She moved with a grace that made people stop and stare, not because she was trying to draw attention, but because divinity couldn't help but shine through. But despite all the changes, she was still fundamentally Cassia. Still the woman who'd spent 8 years protecting a child with fierce devotion. Still the guardian who'd endure anything for those she loved. Tiberius stood beside her, holding her hand, dressed in formal robes that marked him as heir but looking far more interested in making sure Cassia didn't disappear than in the ceremony itself. Every few minutes he'd squeeze her hand, just checking, and she'd squeeze back reassuringly. "By pack law, by ancient right, by the blood oath of the first wolves," Marcus declared, his voice carrying through the hall with alpha authority, "I declare Cassia of the silver hair to be elevated from Omega to the rank of Guardian Luna. She will serve as my mate, as mother and protector to Prince Tiberius, and as Luna of Sanguis Noctis. She will have voice in all council matters. She will have authority to make royal decrees. And she will be honored as the one who saved this kingdom when all others failed or stood aside." He turned to face Cassia directly, his golden eyes, so like his son's, filled with love and respect and promise. "You made a vow the night my son was born," he said quietly, just for her, though everyone heard in the perfect silence. "You kept it when it would have been easier, safer, wiser to look away. You caught him when he fell. You caught him again when darkness tried to claim him. And in doing so, you caught an entire kingdom that was falling apart. We owe you everything, Cassia. And I promise you, you will never be invisible again. You will never sacrifice alone again. You will never doubt your worth again." He lifted a crown, not the heavy, ornate Luna crown that Valentina had worn, but something new. Something Elder Silas and the priestesses had forged specifically for Cassia. It was made of silver blessed by moonlight, set with stones that glowed with the same divine light as her transformation. It was lighter than traditional crowns, designed for a guardian who needed to move quickly, to fight when necessary, to be practical above all else. But it was unmistakably royal, unmistakably powerful. Marcus placed it on her head with reverent care. "I crown you Cassia, guardian Luna of Sanguis Noctis, protector of the forbidden bloodline, mother to the heir, and my beloved mate. May your reign be long, your wisdom deep, and your strength eternal." Cassia's eyes burned with tears, but she held them back, lifting her chin with dignity. "I just kept my promise, Alpha Marcus. And I'll keep making that promise every day for the rest of my life. To Tiberius. To you. To this kingdom. I'll protect what matters. I'll catch those who fall. And I'll never, ever let darkness win." "I know," Marcus said softly, and then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his usually stern face. "That's why you're the only one I trust with all our lives." The crowd erupted in howls, not of challenge or war, but of celebration and unity. The ancient cry of pack solidarity, of crisis survived, of hope renewed. And for the first time in her life, Cassia howled with them as an equal, her voice joining the song of wolves, no longer invisible, no longer silent, no longer powerless, no longer alone. She was Luna. She was guardian. She was mother and mate and protector and queen. But more than any title, she was exactly who she'd always been, the woman who'd caught a falling prince and refused to let go. But that night, after the ceremonies ended and the crowds dispersed and the celebrations finally quieted, Aurelia found Cassia on the tower balcony, the same tower Tiberius had fallen from 8 years ago, the place where everything had begun. Cassia stood at the railing, looking out over the kingdom, one hand resting on the stone where Valentina had stood when she'd committed her terrible crime. The moon hung full and bright above, casting silver light over everything. "You're wondering why it all happened the way it did," Aurelia said gently, joining her sister-in-law at the railing. "Why you were the one to catch him. Why the pendant chose you. Or rather, why Marcella's trap worked so well on you specifically." Cassia nodded, her fingers tracing the stonework. "I understand the trap now. I understand Marcella's plan. But I still don't understand why I was there. That morning 8 years ago, I almost didn't go to the Shadow Garden. I was supposed to be working in the kitchens. But something called me outside. Something made me stand in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Because you were always meant to be there," Aurelia said. The princess pulled a small leather-bound book from her robes. Old, worn, the pages yellowed with age. "After Octavia died, I found her personal journal in her chambers. Marcus never read it, too painful. But I did, searching for answers about why she'd had such strange visions before her death. And I found this entry, written 3 days before Tiberius was born." She opened the book to a marked page, handing it to Cassia. "Read it." Cassia's hands trembled as she took the journal. The handwriting was elegant, flowing but shaky in places, the writing of someone very weak, very sick, pushing through pain to record something important. "I dreamed again last night." The entry began. "The same vision I've had for 3 months now. My son will be in danger. Terrible danger. Someone close to the throne will try to end his life before it truly begins. I see him falling from a great height, screaming, and I cannot save him because I will already be gone. But the moon goddess showed me something else. Showed me who will save him when I cannot. A girl with silver hair. An Omega with kind eyes and a pure heart. Someone invisible to the court. Someone nobody would suspect of carrying ancient power in diluted form. I did research. Looked through old records. Traced bloodlines that the kingdom tried to bury. And I found her, Lucia's daughter. My half-sister's child. The shame our father tried to hide by exiling Lucia to the servant quarters and pretending she never existed. But blood doesn't lie, and Lucia carried the same first wolf lineage I do, just diluted by Omega heritage. Her daughter, My niece, though we'll never acknowledge the connection publicly, serves in the fortress now. She picks flowers in the shadow garden. She has no idea who she really is, what blood runs through her veins, what destiny awaits her. And that's good. That's necessary. Because if she knew, she'd doubt. She'd question. She'd think herself unworthy. But she is worthy. The moon goddess showed me. This girl will catch my son when he falls. She'll protect him when all others fail. She'll sacrifice everything, endure unimaginable trials, and never break her vow. And someday, if the goddess is kind, she'll be recognized for what she truly is. Not a servant, but a guardian. Not an Omega, but a Luna. I'm leaving her my pendant. The real one, blessed by the first wolves. Imbued with protective magic. She'll need it. But more than that, I'm leaving her a legacy she doesn't know she carries. I'm trusting the moon goddess to guide her to the right place at the right time. And I'm praying that my son will grow up knowing he was loved by two mothers, the one who gave him life and the one who saved it. Cassia's vision blurred with tears as she finished reading. She looked up at Aurelia, her voice barely a whisper. Octavia knew. She planned this. She saw what was coming, Aurelia confirmed, her own eyes wet. Not all of it. She didn't foresee Marcella's involvement or the cursed pendant, or how long the struggle would last. But she saw the core truth. That Tiberius would need you. That you were the only one who could save him. And she made sure you'd be in position to do it. But the real pendant, Cassia said, confused. If Octavia left me the real one, then when did Marcella swap it? That's what I've been investigating, Aurelia said. She pulled out another object. A small velvet pouch. I found this hidden in Valentina's old chambers, tucked behind a loose stone. The real pendant. Marcella never gave it to you. She must have intercepted it after Octavia's death, before it could be properly transferred, and replaced it with her cursed version. You've been wearing the fake from the very beginning. She opened the pouch and true moonlight spilled out. The pendant inside was similar to the one Cassia had worn for 5 years, but different in subtle, crucial ways. The silver was purer. The crest of Luna Octavia was more detailed. And most importantly, it radiated warmth without hunger, blessing without cost. This is yours, Aurelia said, lifting the pendant carefully. This is what Octavia intended you to have. Your inheritance. Your birthright. The protection you should have had all along. She fastened it around Cassia's neck. And the moment it settled against her skin, Cassia gasped. Power flowed through her. Not draining, not demanding, but giving. Supporting. Strengthening. Like a mother's embrace after a long absence. She loved you, Aurelia said softly. My sister-in-law, your aunt, the Luna who died bringing Tiberius into this world. She loved you without ever meeting you because she saw your heart and knew it was true. She trusted you with her most precious treasure. And you honored that trust beyond anything she could have imagined. Cassia touched the pendant with trembling fingers, feeling Octavia's blessing wash over her. Genuine this time, uncorrupted. I wish I could have known her. You do know her, Aurelia said. You carry her bloodline. You protected her son. You became what she hoped you'd become. In a way, she lives on through you. Through your courage, your sacrifice, your unwavering devotion to the oath you swore. She smiled. And now you wear her crown and sit on her throne and mother her child. She couldn't have asked for better. They stood together in comfortable silence, two women who'd been shaped by tragedy and triumph, looking out over a kingdom that was finally, tentatively healing. What happens now? Cassia asked finally. Now. Aurelia's voice filled with warmth. Now you live. You raise your son. Yes, he's your son now in every way that matters. You rule beside your mate. You protect this kingdom from threats both obvious and hidden. You become the Luna Octavia knew you could be. Strong but compassionate, powerful but kind, royal but never forgetting where you came from. She put her arm around Cassia's shoulders. And when Tiberius takes the throne someday, when he becomes the greatest alpha our kingdom has ever known. Her voice went soft with emotion. He'll remember that it was his mother, the invisible Omega with forbidden bloodline, who caught him mid-air and refused to let go. Who taught him that true strength lies not in power, but in promises kept. 5 years later, 13-year-old Tiberius stood in the training yard, his golden eyes serious as he watched younger wolves practice their forms. He'd grown tall for his age, already showing the broad shoulders and lean muscle of the warrior he was becoming. But more than physical strength, he'd developed the presence his mother Octavia had possessed, that quality that made people listen when he spoke, trust when he led, follow when he called. At his side, his baby sister Lyra, daughter of Marcus and Cassia, born 3 years after they'd mated, practiced her first shifts with enthusiastic clumsiness. She was 4 years old, all wild dark hair and silver-flecked golden eyes, a perfect blend of her parents' bloodlines. She giggled as her shift went wrong and she ended up half-wolf, half-girl, stuck in an awkward in-between state. "You're being too hard on them," Cassia said, appearing beside her son with the silent grace she'd never lost. Luna now, mother to 2 children, mate to an alpha who adored her, but still fundamentally the same person who'd caught a falling prince 13 years ago. She wore the crown Octavia had intended for her, the real pendant against her heart, and robes that marked her status, but her eyes still held that same kindness that had made a dying Luna trust her with everything. "I'm being realistic," Tiberius corrected, but his voice was fond. He'd inherited his father's seriousness but tempered it with Cassia's compassion. "They need to be ready for anything. The kingdom still has enemies. Dark mages who resent our reforms. Nobles who think Omegas should know their place. Wolves who'll challenge our rule because they think mother, because they think you shouldn't wear a crown." He never called her anything but mother now. Never qualified it with adoptive or guardian. She was his mother, period. And anyone who suggested otherwise faced the full fury of an heir who would tolerate no disrespect to the woman who'd saved his life. "I taught you that protection matters more than perfection," Cassia replied gently. "And that sometimes the weakest wolf becomes the strongest guardian." Tiberius smiled. That same smile that had trusted her 13 years ago in the darkness of hidden walls, when he was tiny and terrified and she was the only safety he knew. "You were never weak, mother. Even when everyone said you were. Even when you thought you were. The moon goddess knew better. Father knew better. And I always knew better." "Neither are you," she said softly, reaching up to touch his face. He'd grown taller than her now, but he still leaned into her touch like he had as a small child. "Even when darkness tried to convince us otherwise. Even when curses and plots tried to destroy us. We survived, Tiberius. We're still here, still standing, still protecting each other." Marcus joined them, effortlessly scooping up Lyra, who immediately demanded to be shifted properly. "Papa, I'm stuck. Fix me." "You have to fix yourself, little star," Marcus said, but his voice was infinitely gentle. Fatherhood had softened him in ways that kingship never could. "Focus. Feel your wolf. Let her show you the way." Lyra screwed up her face in concentration, and gradually her half-shift resolved into a proper wolf form, small and silver-gray, with golden eyes that sparkled with mischief. She yipped triumphantly. The family stood together in the sunlight, whole and healthy, surrounded by a kingdom that had learned hard lessons about judging strength and valuing guardians. The reforms Cassia and Marcus had implemented over the past 5 years had transformed Sanguis Noctis. Omegas could now own property, serve in government, train as warriors if they chose. The rigid hierarchy that had kept people invisible and powerless had been dismantled, replaced with a system that valued contribution over birth rank. It hadn't been easy. There'd been resistance, protests, even 2 assassination attempts against Cassia from traditionalists who thought she was destroying the natural order. But she'd survived all of it, protected by her guardian power, supported by Marcus, and defended fiercely by Tiberius, who'd made it very clear that anyone who threatened his mother would face him. "Do you ever think about that night?" Marcus asked quietly, pulling Cassia close with his free arm while Lyra squirmed and played in the other. "When he fell." "Every day," Cassia admitted. "It's the night that defined everything. When I learned that catching someone isn't about physical strength, but about being willing to try even when falling seems inevitable. When I learned that invisible doesn't mean powerless. When I learned that the greatest love is choosing to stand in the path of destruction for someone else. She looked at her family, her mate, her children, her kingdom. We all fall sometimes. Life pushes us from towers. Curses drain us slowly. Darkness tries to consume us. The blessing isn't in never falling. It's in being caught by those who refuse to let us break. And it's in catching others when they fall, even when it seems impossible. Tiberius stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her in a spontaneous hug that nearly knocked her over. At 13, he was almost as big as his father, but he still hugged her like a child seeking comfort. Thank you for catching me, Mother. That day and every day since. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for being stronger than anyone knew. Thank you for showing me what real power looks like. Cassia held him tight, this boy who'd become a young man, this prince who'd one day be king, this child she'd saved with impossible speed and unwavering love. Tears pricked her eyes as she remembered that terrible morning. The scream, the fall, the desperate lunge, the moment her hands closed around him and she knew she'd do anything, sacrifice anything, endure anything to keep him safe. Thank you for being worth catching, she whispered. Thank you for breaking the curse when I was too blind to see it. Thank you for loving me even though I'm not your blood mother. Thank you for making every sacrifice, every scar, every tear worth it. You are my blood mother, Tiberius said fiercely. Blood isn't just what you're born with. It's what you share through love and sacrifice and choice. Your blood saved me when mine tried to kill me. Your strength became mine. Your courage taught me how to be brave. You're more my mother than anyone else could ever be. Marcus pulled them all into a group embrace. Awkward with Lyra still in wolf form trying to lick everyone's faces, but perfect in its chaos and love and unity. The family that shouldn't have existed, that had been forged through tragedy and trial and tremendous love, stood together in the training yard while the sun painted the world in gold. I have an announcement, Tiberius said suddenly, pulling back and looking nervous in a way he rarely did anymore. I wanted to tell you both at the same time. Elder Silas and the priestesses completed their research. They found documentation of the bloodline Mother carries, the connection to Grandmother Octavia, to the first wolves, to the ancient magic that let her catch me that day. He took a deep breath. They want to officially recognize her as part of the royal bloodline. Not adopted. Not honorary. Actually royal. Which means... He looked at Cassia with fierce pride. Which means you're not just Luna by marriage. You're Luna by blood. Your children, Lyra and any others you have, carry even more concentrated first wolf power than anyone realized. The forbidden bloodline didn't just continue through me. It continued through you too. Cassia stared at him, speechless. She'd known about her connection to Octavia, but she'd never considered what it meant beyond explaining why she'd been able to catch Tiberius. To be officially recognized as royalty, as part of the bloodline she'd protected for 13 years. I don't need recognition, she said finally. I don't need titles or validation. I'm happy just being. Mother, Tiberius interrupted firmly. You deserve recognition. You deserve to know that everything you suffered, everything you sacrificed, was in service of your own bloodline as much as mine. You weren't just a guardian protecting someone else's child. You were family protecting family. You were royalty protecting royalty, even if you didn't know it. And everyone should know that. Marcus squeezed her hand. He's right. Let them honor you properly. Let the kingdom understand just how deeply you belong here. Not as my mate, not as Tiberius's protector, but as yourself, Cassia, descendant of the first wolves, carrier of sacred bloodline, rightful Luna of Sanguis Noctis. Cassia looked at the three of them, her son, her daughter, her mate, her family, her kingdom, her life that had started in invisible servitude and somehow become this impossible, beautiful thing. Okay, she said softly. Okay. Let them recognize it. Let everyone know that the Omega who caught a falling prince was never just an Omega at all. 10 years later, 23-year-old Tiberius stood before the hall of howling as king, his father having stepped down the previous year to let the next generation lead. He wore the ancient crown of Sanguis Noctis, but he'd had it modified. Silver worked into the gold, to honor his mother's bloodline, to acknowledge that strength came in forms their ancestors had never recognized. Beside him stood his Luna, a fierce warrior woman from the eastern provinces who'd won his heart by beating him in combat training and then kissing him while he was still recovering from the shock. Together they'd continue the reforms, continue building a kingdom where rank mattered less than character, where protection mattered more than power. But today he stood before his people for a different purpose. 21 years ago, Tiberius began, his voice carrying through the packed hall, through the open windows to the crowds gathered outside. My birth mother, Luna Octavia, died bringing me into this world. 3 years after that, my adoptive mother, the woman who became Luna after a tragic accident, tried to murder me by pushing me from a tower. The crowd was silent. They all knew this story. It had become legend, part of the kingdom's history, taught to children as a lesson about courage and sacrifice. I should have died that day, Tiberius continued. I would have, if not for one person, an Omega servant named Cassia, who happened to be in the right place at the right time, who moved with impossible speed, who caught me mid-air, who kept me safe for days while enemies hunted me, who endured a 5-year curse that slowly killed her, who transformed into something divine through sheer devotion, who became my mother in every way that matters. He gestured and Cassia stepped forward. She was 43 now, though she barely looked 30, a side effect of her guardian transformation. Silver-white hair fell to her waist, and she wore robes of state that marked her as Queen Mother, as advisor to the king, as living legend. Marcus stood beside her, still powerful despite his age, still watching her with the same love he'd had 20 years ago. And Lyra, now 14 and wild and wonderful, bounced excitedly nearby. Today, Tiberius said, I am signing into law the final reform my parents and I have worked toward for 2 decades. From this day forward, the rank of Omega is abolished in Sanguis Noctis. Gasps rippled through the crowd.